YNW Melly had the world at his feet, but tragedy struck two of his closest friends.
We are following some breaking news right now out of Miramar, where two people are dead following a shooting.
When looking at how the last 24 hours unfolded, so many questions are left unanswered. They were his friends, but they also may be his victims too. Early life. YNW Melly was born in an overlooked place in Florida named Gifford, where he was raised by a single mother who had him when she was only 14. When describing his hometown, the rapper said, "Ain't nobody ever made it out of there, period. We had one NFL player made it out, but he brought his ass right back. Lost souls out there, except for the people I'm with." At kindergarten, Melly met Christopher Thomas Jr., who we today know as YNW Juvie. Melly's hero growing up was Michael Jackson, and in 8th grade he recorded his first ever song using a microphone held up by a coat hanger. He continuously uploaded songs onto SoundCloud and Facebook and gained a decent following in his hometown. The earliest available recording of him online is his 2014 track LOL Freestyle, when he would have been roughly 15 years of age. He rapped as YNW Melly, and the YNW stood for Young World. His friends would also preface all of their names with YNW. At middle school, Melly also became friends with Anthony Williams, who had moved to Gifford from Atlanta. We now know this guy as YNW Sack Chaser. He definitely saw talent in Melly and wanted to handle the business side of YNW. But as well as Melly's obsession with music, he also had an obsession with guns. In 4th grade, he had to stay at his Uncle Ronnie's house sometimes after school. Like many young boys, he was playing with a toy gun and pretending he was in an action movie. Suddenly, he slipped and hit his head on the floor. But while lying there on the floor, he saw something in the corner of his eye. Under the couch was a real gun. He found a gun under the couch at his uncle's house. He took it out, shot it, and was mesmerized by the noise it made and the power it gave him. He took the gun with him and took it everywhere he went, including to school. On October 19, 2015, at around 2 p.m., Melly brought his gun into school on Vero Beach. He had made some enemies and started shooting at 3 people. He may have wanted to kill them or may have wanted to simply fire shots around them to scare them. Thankfully, none of these kids were hit by Melly, who was later arrested. Murder on his mind. Melly was charged with 3 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and 1 count of discharging a firearm in public. He was still a juvenile when he committed this crime, so was sentenced to only 1 year in prison. During his time behind bars, Melly wrote the song Murder on My Mind. This song showed him sing-rapping like Drake or Chris Brown, but talking about incredibly violent themes. Speaking about this time, Melly said, "I literally woke up in the jail cell and I was like, wake up in the morning, I got murder on my mind. AK-47, Mac 11, Glocks, and 9s. In the second verse, he rhymes what could now be considered prophetic. I didn't even mean to shoot him. He just caught me by surprise. I reloaded my pistol, cocked it back, and shot him twice. His body dropped down to the floor and he got teardrops in his eyes. He grabbed me by my hands and said he was afraid to die. I told him, it's too late, my friend. It's time to say goodbye. And he died inside my arms, blood all on my shirt." Melly kept his musical talents to himself while in jail, but after a few months, he shared Murder on My Mind with one of his cellmates. Melly said, "He kept telling everybody like, bruh, you the best rapper in the compound, Melly. This music you can feel." In March 2017, Melly released Murder on My Mind on SoundCloud and YouTube, which propelled his career even further. However, this song doesn't fully encapsulate what Melly's music is all about. As well as talking about violence in some of his songs, a lot of his music contains some heartfelt songs about relationships and women. By 2018, the careers of YNW Melly and the wider YNW crew really started to take off. The hype surrounding Melly increased even further in August, when he appeared on the No Jumper podcast. He talked about his life and music, but then the host, Adam22, asked him about some of his facial tattoos.
You know, I got Sack Chaser right here, that's my brother, that's my twin.
Okay.
And I got Juvie.
Juvie?
Yeah, my brother.
Just a lot of your friends who passed?
Yeah. Nah, them right there.
A couple of months later, both Sack Chaser and Juvie would be friends who had passed, their last day. The YNW crew had finally made it outside of Gifford. These childhood friends were finally out of the hood and were now living in Miramar, a Floridian city between Miami and Fort Lauderdale. When Melly was on Adam22, he was asked what an average day was like. Melly said,
Studio, working music videos, and just coming up with more plans and everything.
On October 26th, the YNW crew was at New Era Sound Studio in Fort Lauderdale and worked long and hard into the night. It wasn't until 3:20 a.m. that they decided to call it a night and go home. What happened next is subject to speculation. What we do know is that at 4:35 a.m., YNW Bortland arrived at Memorial Miramar Hospital with YNW Sack Chaser and YNW Juvie, both of whom were pronounced dead at the scene. When investigating this case, the police initially got Bortland's account of events, which roughly goes as follows. On that night, Bortland was driving his Jeep Compass home to the house in Miramar. Juvie and Sack Chaser were also in the vehicle. They drove on the I-595 to I-75 and exited at Miramar Parkway, heading west. At SW 160th Avenue, Dykes RD, a car pulled up alongside them and started firing bullets. Upon hearing shots, Bortland ducked for cover at the bottom of the vehicle. When he emerged, he saw that Sackchase and Juvie were shot, so he brought them to the nearest hospital. At 4:35 a.m., Corten appeared at the emergency room Memorial Miramar Hospital and pleaded for help for two passengers inside his vehicle. Both of the people inside had suffered gunshot wounds and were unresponsive, and the car was covered in gunshots along the right side of the vehicle. Juvie suffered gunshots to his head and torso, whereas Sackchaser had wounds on his head and back. At this hospital, they were pronounced dead. The South Florida Sun-Sentinel reported, before sunrise on October 26, a Jeep Compass with the rear window punched out delivered mortally wounded Anthony Dondre Williams and Christopher Thomas, Jr. to the emergency bay of Memorial Hospital Miramar. Doctors declared them dead. Henry YNW Bortland was the driver of the Jeep, and the only passengers were the dying men. Upon first glance, it was yet another case of two young men being killed by gang violence, or so it seemed. Melly moves on. In the aftermath, Melly posted, "They took my brothers from me over jealousy. I know y'all watching over me. It's #WinW4L at InSackChaser1 at InJuvie for life and after. They want to see me break down and stop or in jail or a box, but my still need me. They parents need me. They family need me till we meet again. My twins, my slimes." According to Melly, people were jealous of their success, so they pulled up on them and did a drive-by. Melly's Instagram stories were mainly tributes to his recently departed pals. Despite the passing of his two friends, Melly still had to focus on his music career, which continued to progress. However, before the new year, Melly was arrested for possession of marijuana. He was in jail. For such a minor crime, he would not be there for long. During his time in jail, Melly released his mixtape, We All Shine, which featured Kanye West on the song Mixed Personalities. Like Murder on My Mind, people have been heavily scrutinizing the lyrics of this song since everything happened to look for clues. Many have suspected that, like Kanye, Melly might be bipolar or have multiple personality disorders. A song about having mixed personalities certainly alluded to this, but there is no diagnosis from a doctor confirming this. In December, YNW Melly released a documentary about his life. It showed the strong friendships he had with Sackchaser and Juvie, as well as the heartwarming relationship he has with his mom. But strangely enough, the movie closes with the caption, 4 days after the completion of this film, YNW Melly and his friends were the targets of a drive-by shooting in Miami, Florida. Curiously, the documentary implied that Melly was a victim, even though he wasn't in the car. This may have been a semantic issue, but this was just an extra piece of confirmation that the police needed before they made their next move. Melly is arrested.
Now at 5:37, 2 men are in jail this morning, including an up-and-coming Florida rapper. Both men are charged in a double murder. Police are saying the two staged a crime scene to make it look like a drive-by shooting.
On February 12, 2019, YNW Bortland was arrested with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts as an accessory after the fact. A day later, Melly turned himself in and was also charged with the murder of his 2 childhood friends. Hours beforehand, Melly posted on Instagram, "To all my fans and supporters know I did not get locked up in Washington, but I'm turning myself in today. I want you guys to know I love you and appreciate every single one of y'all. A couple months ago, I lost my 2 brothers by violence, and now the system want to find justice. Unfortunately, a lot of rumors and lies are being said, but no worries, God is with me and my brother Jinu Bortland, and we want y'all to remember it's a YNW family. I love you at InSackChaser1 and at InJuvie." The police, however, say things differently. Miramar police tweeted, "Jamel Demons, aka YNW Melly, and Cortland Henry, aka YNW Bortland, have been arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The victims, Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr., were killed on October 26, 2018. The investigation, supported by forensic evidence, has concluded that Demons shot and killed Williams and Thomas Jr., and that Demons and Henry staged the crime scene to resemble a drive-by shooting, and the plot thickened even further. On February 21st, both Melly and Bortland were connected to another death, the 2017 passing of a police officer named Gary Chambliss. Chambliss was struck by a stray bullet when Melly and Bortland were part of a group of people firing shots after a bottle was thrown at a car. The police said, "After that shooting in Miramar, our detectives will be following up for possible information in connection to the Gary Chambliss homicide. Perhaps, given their current situation, they might be able to shed some light on the case." With both of them behind bars, it was clear that police did not buy the story given by Bortland, and the drive-by he claims to have happened was simply a cover-up. This led the police to that conclusion. The evidence. In the aftermath, the police closed off the supposed crime scene. 160th and 172nd Avenue was examined for a considerable period of time by police. However, instead of finding evidence, their biggest clue was the lack of evidence. On the spot where the shooting of two people inside the vehicle occurred, there was no broken glass on the ground, and rather suspiciously, there was not a single report of gunshots to the police from this area. CCTV footage also painted a different picture of Bortland's account of events. At New Era Sound Studio, the Jeep Compass had not 2 but 3 passengers, and the third passenger was YNW Melly. Sack Chaser and Juvie were on the right side of the vehicle, whereas Melly and Bortland were on the left side. On the CCTV footage at Memorial Miramar Hospital, Melly is nowhere to be seen. Bortland was wearing a t-shirt when departing the studio. Upon arrival, he is wearing a hoodie, which police suggest could be because he was covering something up. He may have had blood on his t-shirt. Bortland's account of events had holes in it everywhere, so police spoke to YNW Taliban, who was with them in the studio that night. Taliban's real name is Dontavius Withers, and the police had to deal with the rather suspicious fact that he originally identified himself as Dontavius Williams. He and a few others drove home in Dontavius's red Mitsubishi, while the others went in the Jeep. He contended that he brought YNW Melly home that night, and inside the Jeep were the other 3. However, video evidence from the studio shows Melly getting into the Jeep, so Taliban had to change his story. Withers said that Melly got in the Jeep initially, but along the way, he got into the red Mitsubishi instead. He said that he was contacted by Melly on Snapchat to make this change. The fact that Withers was changing his story when faced with conflicting evidence was incredibly suspicious. The alternative story. Taliban's testimony did not get the police any further, and here's what the police alleged happened. When they left New Era Sound Studio, 4 passengers were in the Jeep, as the CCTV footage suggests. To find out where they went next, the police got a warrant for the phones that they presumably had in their pockets that night. T-Mobile could track where they went once they left the studio. T-Mobile's cell phone records showed Melly traveled in a western direction. They then reached Pembroke Road near the Everglades. A South Florida newspaper describes this place as a lonely stretch of road near the Everglades. In other words, an ideal location to murder somebody. On this very road, the police found pieces of glass, the very same type of glass that matches the shards missing from the Jeep Compass windows. They also found 840 caliber shell casings, which are the exact type of bullets found in the body of Sack Chaser and Juvie. This is the rough area where the police believe that the shooting took place. The shooting did not come from the right, but from the left. The shooting also did not occur from outside the vehicle, but on the inside. According to court documents, evidence from the autopsy revealed that both victims' wound paths to their heads were from a left to right direction. This directly contradicts the statements made by Henry, Bortland, and do not support the statements of a drive-by shooting that occurred on the right side of the vehicle. Furthermore, 40 caliber shell casing was found inside of the vehicle on the floorboard of the left rear passenger side. The left rear passenger seat is exactly where Melly was sitting on this journey, which suggests that they were both shot inside the vehicle by Melly. However, it is still heavily debated that this was the correct sequence of events. Another curious fact is how long it took them to get to the hospital. If one of your friends is shot, it's assumed that you would drive them there immediately. Detective Mark Moretti wrote in an affidavit that Melly and Bortland drove around with the bodies in the car for a period of time so they could concoct a story about the shooting before they arrived at the hospital. When Melly walked from the studio, he was carrying a Gucci bag. The police don't know what is in the bag, but notice that it appears to be weighed down by something, which they presume could have been a gun. Curiously, there is no DNA evidence of Melly being inside the Jeep that night. The best supporting evidence that Melly has in his favor is that there was no gun residue on his hands on the day of the murder. So far, the witnesses of what happened had contradicting evidence. The only person who the police did not find contradictory evidence from is Jacoby Mills, who was in the red Mitsubishi that night. The statement he gave to the police paints an incredibly vivid picture of what happened that night. Speaking to him was a major breakthrough for the police. Jacoby Mills. As the CCTV footage shows, YNW members either went inside the Compass Jeep or the red Mitsubishi and were going back to the same house. According to Jacoby, the gray Jeep followed them home until they reached I-75 onto Miramar Parkway. He said that the gray Jeep was still behind them when they reached McDonald's on Miramar Parkway, but when they arrived at the gate, no one was behind them. He thought they had stopped to get something to eat, so didn't think much about it. Jacoby and his friends returned to the house and later heard about the drive-by shooting. They went to Fredo Bang's house, who collected Melly from the alleged drive-by. Bortland and Melly were both at this house. Mills said that Melly was now wearing different clothes. Melly was also crying at the time, but Mills alleges that Melly was pretending to cry and didn't look sincere. He asked Melly who the shooter was, but he refused to give an answer. Jacoby then went with Melly, Bortland, and Melly's manager out to a wooded area that Bortland knew about. At this location, Bortland had hidden guns, one of which was a .40 cal, which was still covered in blood. Melly's manager said that he would dispose of this gun and it would never be seen again. This chain of events is denied by almost everyone else involved. It does explain why Melly was never at the hospital. According to prosecutor Christine Bradley, Melly was picked up by Fredo Bangs, or Frederick Givens, as he is referred to in court. What you're also going to find out is that while Mr. Demons, Melly, is out there on the side of the road at 4 in the morning, 4:42 specifically, he sends a drop pin, a digital homing beacon, to his current location to one of his friends, Frederick Givens. But Bangs has refused to cooperate with this investigation. He pleaded the Fifth Amendment, his right to remain silent, and even refused to talk after he was told that it would give him immunity from prosecution. His lawyer argued that Broward County giving him immunity does not save him from other states, and even the feds from taking action as well. His lawyer said Mr. Givens has exercised his right to remain silent, and the court ultimately granted Mr. Givens' request, the secret passenger. And just when you think this case could not get any more complicated, there is yet another twist in the tale. YNW Melly's initial attorney for this case was a lawyer named Brad Cohen, who also represented Kodak Black in his murder trial. Despite no longer being involved in the case, he believes that Melly could win, he said. Day 2 is coming up on the YNW Melly case. The first few days of trial are not that interesting in regards to a story or the real meat of the case. This case is going to be very technical with phones and date, etc. Then Cohen says something incredibly interesting and adds another theory about what may have happened. But again, they can't say someone else didn't get in the car or someone else did the shooting. I think the case is built in reasonable doubt, and I saw a lot of the discovery while I was on the case. Like I said, this will be a tough case for the prosecution. And the fact that you need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt means that despite all of the damning evidence against him, Melly could end up winning this case. Jacoby Mills said that after he passed McDonald's, the car started to slow down, and he has no idea what happened afterward. It's still possible that they picked up another person, and this individual was the murderer. That being said, Bortland and Melly have not mentioned a fifth person entering the car. This could be just a clever move from his defense to complicate the case even further and make it even more difficult for the jury to prove beyond any reasonable doubt that it was they who killed their friends. Melly's support. Since his arrest, Melly has received support from all over the hip-hop world. Lil Durk posted his support on Instagram. Fredo Bangs has recently released an entire song named Free Melly. There has even been a petition to free Melly through a presidential pardon. I'm willing to be corrected on this, but a lot of Melly's supporters seem to have their rose-tinted glasses on. They want Melly to be free from jail, but don't provide reasons why they think he is innocent and did commit the murders he is charged with. When King Von posted his support for the Free Melly movement on Twitter, a curious exchange of tweets can be found in the replies. Someone replied to one of his tweets with, "Y'all keep saying free him, he's a killer though." Von responds with, "Do being a killer mean you can't be labeled a good person?" And we all killers. That being said, a lot of the Free Melly movement comes from the lack of trust the hip-hop world understandably has in the criminal justice system. And whether Melly is guilty or not, he has spent 4 years in prison waiting for his trial to start. In December 2022, he said that he has been mistreated in prison and wrote on Instagram, "As of this moment today, I am officially in fear of my life. A new captain named Hubert and XO Jenkins have taken over the jail for 2 weeks now and have handed out even harsher punishments for me than the previous ones in place. Since December 1st, I have been moved and housed on a unit that holds 24 inmates at once. I am the only inmate being housed on the vacant unit, with no phone privilege, no television, and no access to a newspaper. They are watching my every move on camera, making sure I don't use the phone to tell the world how I am being mistreated, discriminated, threatened physically, harassed. And whatever side of the fence you are on, Melly should be given a speedy trial and treated with the same dignity given to other inmates." November 2020 was when things got particularly intense for Melly. The prosecution alleged that they had video evidence of him confessing to these murders, the confession. The prosecution came across a video on Melly's phone, which was recorded a month after the deaths of his two friends. In the video, Melly says the following words: "There's no regrets for the that I did for that to die. Both of them never say when." Prosecutor Christine Bradley said, "And so he says, and there's no regrets for the that I did," including the derogatory word that I refuse to use for African Americans. And he then takes the pen and puts it to his head in the shape of a gun, like pulling the trigger, throws up a blood gang sign, and then he says, "Both of them never say when." So the interesting part of this video is it was 1 month to the day after the shootings occurred on October 26th. Melly's lawyer, Raven Liberty, believed that the prosecutor displayed cultural ignorance and did not understand that Melly was simply quoting a line from a song. In Kevin Gates' song 4:30 a.m., he raps, "No regrets for the shit I did. That also mean for the as I killed." The lawyers point out that musicians will sing about a number of things, but that obviously does not mean that they did it. Liberty said, violent imagery in music is not new. For the prosecution to use this video in a criminal proceeding is as credible as using a video of someone singing Johnny Cash's Folsom Prison Blues, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die, or Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, Mama, I killed a man, put a gun against his head, pulled my trigger, now he's dead, in a prosecution. The reliance on this legal gimmick, in effect putting a specific type of music on trial, highlights the weakness of their case and the general lack of evidence. Moreover, the racial aspects of this type of misleading selective prosecution are painfully obvious. This confession by Melly turned out to work in Melly's favor. Ultimately, the police's explanation of events has one gigantic problem with it. Why? Why would Melly kill two of his best friends? And even if he didn't like them by then, why would he risk his entire career? There is one video that gives us one possible theory as to why he could have done this. The motive. YNW Sack Chaser was the oldest of the group and saw himself as the CEO of YNW and the person who could take Melly's career to the next level. Melly's mother, who has supported his music career from the very start, also sees herself in this role, and this has caused friction between the two of them. In March of that year, more information came forth. iCode posted a video of Melly's mother on its YouTube channel. There is no date given to the video, but Melly's mother criticizes Sack Chaser for threatening her.
Show me text messages from Sack Chaser threatening all her friends and all these people like he's about this life. But I'm saying, like, who the you ever robbed? Who the you ever shot at? What you ever did? You couldn't even take a weed charge.
She goes on to see.
And don't ever come for me, because my credentials is real. It ain't even a joke. So don't ever try to come for me.
Then we get to why they might be feuding.
Melly is my child, and he is gonna be great because he's talented. He's talented because his mom, not because of your little ass.
In August 2018, 2 months before the murders, Melly texted his mom, "Get me a Glock ASAP, and like go now, I just don't want no illegal gun." And if we are looking for a motive for Melly, this is the most plausible reason as to why you would kill one of your friends. But there are still so many problems with this theory. The footage is very poor and the video starts with her mid-sentence and doesn't fully explain the situation. And of course, there are two people that Melly allegedly killed. If that's why he killed Sack Chaser, why did he kill Juvie too? This is someone he knew since he was in kindergarten, and now he wanted to murder him. And why is Bortland going along with this? Well, there's evidence that could suggest he was doing this as a favor and would be rewarded for his loyalty by Melly as his career continued to grow. 2 weeks after the incident, Melly sent this strange message to his girlfriend on Snapchat. It wrote, "This saved my life. He coming everywhere with me cause of them crackers. Come grab him. It's my fault you forgot. I keep Bortland with me cause at the end of the day, he did one of the realest in my life." Whatever evidence the police bring forward, the motive for this crime still clouds any conclusive evidence that Melly did this. At the end of the day, there are only 4 people that knew what happened that night, and 2 of those are no longer with us. It's up to a jury to decide whether the remaining 2 people are telling the truth. Thank you so much for watching. Please click on some of the videos you see in front of you now.